This is the IDP After Show.
Hey people, welcome to the IDP After Show. I'm Jase Abbey and I'm excited to bring you the Week 5 episode of the Rankings Show. As usual, I'll go position by position, highlighting some of the biggest risers and fallers in my rankings. And tonight I'm joined by Aron Evers, content creator and one of my many talented colleagues at the IDP show. Aron, how goes it, dude?
It's not bad, mate. It's not bad. I'm very excited to be here. Like I've done some after show stuff group wise, but this is my first sort of scurry foray into the one-on-one sort of podcast side of things. Josh has let me out of the basement, so I feel like I'm free to just run rampant and get away from my usual data collection for the big three guys.
All right, it's time we shined that spotlight on you, on the wonder that is Aron Evers. So, you are the creator of perhaps the single most impressive piece of fantasy analysis I've ever heard. When you described a player as Mama's Meatloaf a while back, you knew this was coming.
I wasn't sure. I didn't know whether you were going to go with Mum's Meatloaf or whether you were going to bring up me talking about Jalen Carter's off-field speed score. I didn't know. I knew it was going to be one or the other. But I'm enjoying the fact that they've taken the bit and they're running with it on the main show. And it's now every time I'm sort of driving to work or whatever, and I'm listening to the show, just because time differences, it drops in my feed right for my morning commute in the morning, and I'm like, the Bengals game's coming up. The Bengals game's coming up because I know the doc. I've done the doc. I know how it's outlined. I'm like, and then there it is. If Logan Wilson's in the top 5 scorers, Mum's Meatloaf, baby. And I'm loving it. It's great.
I can never look at him the same way again. That'll just, he's going to carry that for the rest of his career for me now.
He is kind of built like Meatloaf with legs, though. Like in like those Iowa linebackers, they all kind of look the same. Like him, Muma, like they're all just. I'm going to touch on this a little bit later in terms of like what linebackers that look the same, and they're like clones of each other. It's just crazy the factory that they're bringing them out of over there.
Yeah, I bet Wilson's super proud to have reached the pinnacle of the sport, only to be described as Mama's Meatloaf on legs.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be something that he talks about with the grandkids one day.
Oh, for sure. Anyway, look, I appreciate you coming on tonight to help me to break down who we like and who we hate ahead of Week 5. So let's just get this thing going. And let's start with arguably the most sought after position in IDP, the linebackers. So give me your first linebacker who you are high on this week.
So the first one that I'm high on, and I'm going to bundle them together kind of, because both guys that I'm high on for this week are from the same game. So it's the game that's going to be close to our hearts purely because of where it's played. It's the London game. So the first guy that I've got here on my list is I've got Terrel Bernard. You've got him at linebacker 22 in your ranks for this week. I'm really liking him to break into the top 15 and push for top 12 in the scoring by the end of the week. He's put up 18.94 points per game across the 4 weeks so far. Now, obviously, that is buoyed by a massive week 3 where he scored over 40. So far, he's racked up 29 tackles, 2 TFLs, 2 INTs, 2 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries. Everything comes in pairs for him, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 PDs, 2 QB hits. He's playing about 50 snaps a game, which is translating to 94% of what they're doing. He's got an 11.4% missed tackle rate, which is a little bit higher than you'd like to see. But going into week 3 at least, so I don't know if you saw the chart that Macri did, the tackle efficiency chart that he put out last week. For teams of where they rank in terms of, oh mate, it is like smashed all my tackle props. Like it was gold. But it talked about like tackle efficiency, tackles allowed for the linebacker position. He did one for safeties as well.
I did see this.
Yes,
Sorry,
yeah. So by that table, going into week 3, he hasn't done one for including week 4 data. So going into week 4, with the first 3 weeks, the Bills themselves, the Bills are playing the Jags. The Jags were second in tackle efficiency allowed and linebacker tackles per game. So there's going to be a lot of action there for Terrel Bernard. I know Milano's going to get his, but Bernard's playing almost 100% of snaps. He's gone boom. At the worst, I'd say he's probably I feel like where you've ranked him at linebacker 22 is his floor. And I easily see him sort of pushing for that linebacker 1 scoring over here in old Blighty.
Yeah, I like it. You mentioned the missed tackles. You kind of stole my point there. Yeah, I would like to see him record more solos. It depends on your scoring in your league, but it's just been. I think he might even have more assists than solos, and that's unusual. So yeah, I'm not as high on him as you. It sounds like, but yeah, I still like the guy. He's playing every down. He's kind of like taken hold of that role next to Milano, because we were unsure at the beginning of the year whether it was going to be Dodson. So yeah, I like it. I like it.
I think the main thing that sort of speaks to me on the Bernard side of things is if you look at his stat lines and stuff, he's always around the ball in a defense that makes big plays. So there's the Bills defense is always generating big plays on the defensive side of the ball. So he's recovering fumbles. He's getting the bat downs. Big 3 scoring is really generous towards passes defended. So he's getting the bat downs. He's got a couple of picks himself. So he's obviously, he hasn't got DB hands. So it's just, he's there around the ball when they're making plays. So I'm happy to follow him, hoping for one of those boom weeks of big plays. A 40-point week is not something I put together a table for the guys to have a look at in the most recent pod, and we're averaging 1 or 2 people per week that's able to put up a 40-point week, and Bernard's one of those people. So the floor might not be there with the tackle side of it, but I'm definitely thinking that the ceiling could be against a Jacksonville team that has not looked great on offense at the moment. Lawrence is still looking shaky. ETN is, he's put the ball on the ground before. Bigsby's put the ball on the ground before. So there's definitely plenty of opportunities, I feel like, for him to get at least 1 turnover and still come in at sort of that 6 to 7 tackle mark. And push for that sort of 15 plus points at least, maybe even looking at 20 if you're lucky.
Yeah, 2 points on that. Yeah, you're right to mention the fact it's over in the UK. Crazy stuff. Turnovers seem to be aplenty in these games. So yeah, maybe he can get involved in that. And second point is that I've increasingly come around to this way of thinking that there is a place for these boom or bust types. And yeah, it's probably a little early to call him that, but depending on your league scoring, obviously, I like to pair someone with a solid weekly floor, a couple of guys with a solid weekly floor, with a boom or bust type. The guy that springs to mind for me is Devin White, Frankie Louvu, that sort of character that, they might not have the tackle volume. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've kind of come around to that way of thinking, and that's what makes me kind of like Bernard a little more, perhaps, than even where I've got him ranked this week. So you've kind of convinced me. I'll take that one. So my first guy is Quincy Williams. I got him as the LB 21, which is 1 behind Jordan Hicks and 1 ahead of Terrel Bernard. So you'll often hear me talk about snap share and snap volume, especially where the linebackers are concerned. It's the single biggest sort of determining factor in terms of tackle volume after all. So, but sometimes I think just sometimes we've got to hand it to those guys who are just balling out. And Williams is that guy. He's had double-digit tackles in 3 out of 4 games this year, and he's had a pass breakup in 3 out of 4 games as well.
I like it because I think New York has got a defense where both linebackers can easily put up points. I've got a special place for CJ Mosley in my heart. Like, I've got a CJ Mosley Baltimore Ravens jersey hanging in my closet somewhere from when, when we drafted him, and I thought he was going to be the next Ray Lewis. So I've always loved CJ. He's getting a little bit older, and Quincy is coming into, like, this is, I feel like a breakout year where we see it come together for Quincy. Like, it just feels like it's starting to click for him, not only in his in his run defense, but also in his coverage as well. Like, I watched a clip from I watched the start of the Jets game that was just played, Chiefs Jets game, which everybody saw because of Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and everything else. So I watched the start, but it's very hard for me to watch the entire game because it runs at kicks off at 1 o'clock in the morning our time, and you're going to bed at 4 o'clock and getting up for work at 6. It's not great to watch the whole thing. But there was a play where I think it might have been Marquez Valdes-Scantling took off down the sideline, and you saw Williams backpedal and just so smoothly open his hips and just follow him down the sideline in just perfect coverage. And I was just like, and then they highlighted it on the broadcast, and they're like, "Yo, Quincy Williams, like, looking sharp in coverage." And I just went, and I in my head I went, I think this is the season that he starts to put it together. And so with the way that this defense operates, where there's so much pressure being generated by that front, but I feel like on the back, like, apart from Sauce, like, there's not really a lot going on the back end. So there's kind of like this dead spot in the middle where the defense is still generate so many tackles and so many play opportunities, and I just feel like there's the perfect chance for him to easily, like you said, he's double-digit tackles 3 out of 4 games so far already. So he's going to be one of those guys that you mentioned that will give you that floor, so you can go chase the upside because he's just been so consistent.
Exactly, yeah. The Jets have got to be feeling pretty smug about that contract extension they signed him to back in, I think it was March, right? So, I think we saw him start to emerge last year. Don't quote me on this, but I think he got more playing time as the season wore on. This year, it's just been right out of the gate. Every down guy or near to every down guy, and I really like him as a player. I own loads. I've got loads of Williams on loads of my fantasy rosters, just because I thought, he's one of those guys he doesn't really get the recognition, but he's got a good chance to hang with the likes of, his teammates, CJ Mosley, and those two guys, as you rightly said, are just going to eat this year.
And that's the thing. Like, I noticed you've got like, the matchup is going to be a great one there against Denver, and you've got Mosley up at top 6. But if you can get the discount for pretty much similar production and get at Quincy's, because you had to pay up to get CJ this year as well. That was the thing. Like, Mosley was in these best ball drafts and IDP drafts that we did. Mosley was going as sort of a top 7, top 8 linebacker anyway, and Quincy was going in the 20s, in the 20s and 30s, and that's sort of where he's ranked. But so you've got him, as your LB3, LB4 when you drafted him, but you've got the ability for him to be putting up sort of LB1, LB2 points with the matchup.
Yep, exactly. So give me your next linebacker. Who else do you like this week?
Yeah, so I mentioned that it all tied together with this London game. So the other linebacker that I went with, it's not Matt Milano. I've split it up. But it's Muma. It's Chad Muma. And I've got a weird affinity with this game, the Bills Jags, because the only NFL game that I've ever been to was at the London series in 2016, and it was Bills Jags. And it was an absolute barn burner. Blake Bortles went off. Allen Robinson went for 180. It was just, I think the final score, I can't remember exactly, but it was like 70 points or something was scored. It was an incredible game. But I don't know if I see that in this one, because both Jags and Bills defenses that year were terrible. But this is more around the opportunity that Muma's got with Devin Lloyd. Thumb surgery, didn't travel. So he stayed in London. He stayed in Jacksonville and didn't travel to London. And what he did in that one game last week, London game again against the Falcons, with Lloyd's absence. So he played 98% of the snaps. He put up just shy of 15 points, 7 total tackles, 2 passes defended. He did have a 33% missed tackle rate. He had 3 solos, 3 assists, 3 missed. So real consistent on that side. But it's more the fact of the opportunity provided. Going back to that the sheet that I mentioned that Macri, the table that Macri released, the Jags were second in tackle efficiency allowed and linebacker tackles per game. The Bills were third, right below them. Like, they're still offering up at close to 20 linebacker tackles per game. Now, Foy will probably get as close to those 20 as he can because he's an absolute machine. But I still think, with where I saw you had him ranked at linebacker 40, I still think there's a definite chance for Muma to sort of put up numbers that's going to put him in the solidly in sort of the LB2, LB3 range. So we're talking high 20, low 20, through to the 30 range in the scoring and the positional scoring. So I'm not reaching for the stars with this one. It's just, I think, in an injury absence provided, I do think he can fill the gap. Well, at least 66% of the time, I think he can fill the gap. 33% of the time, you're going to put him in your lineup, and he's going to miss. So.
Yeah, I mentioned Muma as one of my linebacker risers last week for many of the same reasons as those that you brought up there. So it was nice to see him play the kind of the sizable role that we expected him to in Lloyd's absence last week. I've got concerns about his ability in coverage.
He was not very good in coverage.
No, and he wasn't very good last year either.
He wasn't very good in run defense. I should have prefaced this. He wasn't very good. He scored decent points, but dear God, the PFF grades were horrendous. Like, his tackle grade and his run defense grade were both through the floor. So don't hear what I'm not saying. It's not like I think he's a superstar talent. This is an opportunity over talent perspective at the moment.
I totally get you. And I'm actually not too concerned about the missed tackles. It wasn't a problem for him last year when he got a larger role after the midway point in the season. So that concerns me less. Like, I'm happy to write that one off as a one game anomaly. The coverage, his ability in coverage does concern me, but it doesn't concern me for this week because what options do they really have there? I know they got Ventrell Miller in the draft. I forget where they drafted him. It was too early, though. I think it was at 3rd, 4th round, something like that.
Yeah, I think he was a day 2 guy, and most people had him pegged as like a late day 3.
Yeah, but he's not going to be ready. He's not going to be any better than Muma, and I'm not a big fan anyway of Miller. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be Muma again. He's going to play almost every down again, if not every down. And he's got every chance to be productive. And this is a weekly show, so maybe I'm wrong about talking about his long-term projections. But yeah, I'm concerned about him. But I'm also concerned about Lloyd, to be honest with you, because he doesn't look too special in that area either. So yeah, let's watch this space. But for week 5, I don't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to steal a man's job while he's injured, you better play a lot better than he did last week. Let's put it that way. So, but
yeah,
it's not like Lloyd can kick him off the field while he's back in Jacksonville resting up on thumb surgery. So,
exactly.
Plug him in this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. So my next guy is David Long Jr. I've got him at LB 38, 1 spot behind Demario Davis and 1 ahead of Javon Bentley. So the Dolphins have really been keeping us on our toes with their off-ball linebackers this year. Jerome Baker was the every down guy in the first few weeks, and then Long's role kind of grew from week 1 to week 2 because Van Ginkel, who had spent the majority of his opening game in the linebacker spot, he was moved to the edge to help replace Jalen Phillips. We all know that. But Long actually outsnapped Baker last week, earning a 93% snap share to Baker's 76%. So yeah, that's something I want to keep an eye on. Now, Long has been getting, quite rightly been getting a lot of criticism from, mainly from Dolphins fans, this week for some of the poor reads. There was one in particular led to a really long run. So yeah, it may cost him his job if he can't improve pretty rapidly. They may flip back to Baker. the situation's still in flux, is basically what I'm saying. In the next few weeks will be telling, especially once Phillips gets back. But for now, one thing's pretty clear. Baker is seemingly trended downwards, and Long's stock appears to be on the rise. Certainly as a fantasy asset, anyway. Yeah, so
he's been so inconsistent this year. I'm just having a look at the PFF grades for him, and
Yep.
week one he played really limited, because I remember there was a lot of preseason hype around him in the IDP community that had sort of trickled over into it was one of, I think it was like preseason week 2 or week 3, had sort of trickled over into like the normie NFL stuff. Like I know like Austin Gale, formerly of PFF, I can't remember where he works for now, and then Nate Tice both had like threads about David Long in one of the preseason games where he just lit up the stat sheet and just looked incredible on the field. But then, as we all know, preseason is not real. Like the stuff that we see in preseason doesn't, like, a lot of the time it won't consistently translate. I don't want to say it won't translate, but it won't consistently translate. And then week 1 he got limited amount of snaps. He only played 17 in week 1, and then that bumped to 62 in week 2, and then it was back down to 36 in week 3 and up to 54 in week 4. But in weeks 1 and 4, like, he's kind of had an amazing grade sandwich, like, because he like, hear me out, my food analogies, man, hear me out.
I like it. Keep them coming.
Yeah, just because like weeks 1 and 4, his total defensive grade was like 40, essentially, like 39.7 in week 1, 40.9 in week 2. In week 4. But weeks 2 and 3, 79.5 overall grade with an 80.8 tackle grade. And then in week 3, 75.3 overall grade with an 83.1 run defense grade. So he's like, it's like an amazing sandwich with moldy bread is what we've seen from David Long so far. Where, like, as long as you pick around the crust, you've just got juicy steak in the middle. So far is what he's given us. So I don't know what you're getting for dessert. Like, week 5 is dessert. I don't know what's coming. Like, what did you order off the menu? Literally, it could be either way. But I think this defense, after the Bills game, the Dolphins defense is probably looking at themselves a little bit, going, we just got the brakes beat off us by a team that has one option. Like, you know, it was Stephon Diggs. That's all it was. Like, and that's like, if Kadeko, who was alive after the beating that Stephon Diggs gave him, and then his coach would have given him, like, he got cooked by Diggs. But it's going to be an entirely different style matchup with the Giants. Like, you're not. They've got like 77 slot receivers and Darren Waller. Like, you're not getting beaten by an amazing outside guy. So I think there's going to be a lot of action over the middle, and if David Long's standing out there, he should hopefully get involved in the action.
Yeah, that's if they start to use Waller. That is, I lost on an accumulator the other week a parlay on Waller, but it is what it is. Yeah, I guess he's my version of your Chad Muma, I guess, this week.
I just looked at the rank, 2 ranks apart.
Yeah, I recognize he's not a great player. He's always been a mediocre linebacker for me, even last year. So yeah, I know he's not great. I'm just liking the way this is trending for his week 5 value. And I am relying on that continuing. And if it doesn't, if they flip back again, then obviously this is going to be a really bad pick. But yeah, maybe like you say, they start to take a look at what went wrong. You know, they got 50 points put up on them, or near enough. Maybe they start to reflect on what went wrong there. But I think it is one of the better offenses they've played this year. Who's the first guy who you are not liking this week?
So the 2 guys that I'm not liking, and again, I think I just bundle things together. Like the way that I've gone about these 2 guys that I don't like is, I feel like if I walked past them in a crowded street, I wouldn't be able to tell them apart. I've gone for, so my first one is Cody Barton. Like, Cody Barton to me feels like a generic, like, did you ever play Microsoft Wii?
I did.
Yeah, I feel like Cody Barton to me looks like someone's taken a me character and just like put them on an NFL field and then given them like real life, like real life texturization. Like he's just a generic blank white dude. And I can't get on board with the fact that you've got him. Where did I see it? It was like, LB13. Now I get it.
Yeah.
He's playing the Bears. I understand the allure. But I've got a counterpoint for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think Cody Barton's very good. I kind of feel like he's just a body in a uniform on the field all the time. Like he's playing 100% of snaps. So it's not like and again, I always feel bad when I say things like, I don't think he's very good, when I'm sitting here in my attic sort of thing, like recording a podcast, talking about how someone's not very good when he's in like the 0.1% of like physical athletes doing a job that I dream I wish I could. But there's no ceiling. Like it's just, Cody Barton is very, very good at running around the field and making tackles, and there's not really much else. And against a team that, and again, with these linebackers, I'm literally just going to keep like copy pasting Macri's work to help my arguments. The Bears were third worst in tackle efficiency allowed and linebacker tackles allowed per game going into week 4. There's just not a lot. So Cody Barton's really, really good at running around the field making tackles from the linebacker position, but the Bears aren't really giving up a lot of tackles at the linebacker position, and I just don't know what he's going to do if they're not giving them to him.
Yeah, I just like the tackle volume. He's averaging, 9 tackles a game so far this season. I get that he's not a flashy player, but he does have that, that every down role ahead of Jamin Davis. Doesn't look likely to give it up anytime soon. He's just a steady performer so far this year for me. I didn't know how it was going to play out when Barton was signed. I thought it was going to be Davis, and obviously Davis has had quite a few off-field issues, mainly around just not being able to look at speed limits and adhere to them, right? But
his off-field vision isn't great.
Barton's just a steady performer for me. If I know a guy can get 9 tackles a game, he's going to be an LB2 for me. And that's kind of where I've got Barton.
So who are you not looking forward to this week then as your first guy?
Yeah, Shaquille Leonard headlines for me. So he's unranked. Was previously my LB45. He's been sliding for weeks. In fact, he's one of the few players that's consistently slid until this week. And he's now unranked. He just doesn't look like the dynamic playmaker we coveted a few years back. It looks like the injuries of the last 2 years have kind of caught up with him, and we're seeing that kind of play out in terms of his diminishing role in that defense. His snap share from week 1 to week 4 goes 86%, 71, 69, and then last week was 45%. And obviously, as a result of that reduced role, his production has been really poor. He's got 19 tackles through 4 games and no big plays to really speak of. It doesn't help him that he's got EJ Speed nipping at his heels, and it definitely doesn't help him that Speed has been far more productive despite playing, 50 or so fewer snaps. That's a whole game less than Leonard. So, Speed's role continues to grow larger each week, and last week was actually the first time when he played a bigger role than Leonard. Just don't like what we're seeing from Leonard. It's probably too late to hop off the train if you're looking to trade him. But he's thoroughly deserves not to be ranked this week, in my opinion.
I want to disagree with you, but I can't. Like it makes me so sad. Like I remember sort of rookie year maniac, like 2018, I think. Yeah, 2018 was his draft year. He was part of that like insane linebacker draft class that gave us like Roquan Smith, Darius Leonard, Tremaine Edmonds, Leighton Vander Esch. And he was a second round guy. Like all of these guys were first round guys, and he came out. He was a second round guy, and he blew the socks off of all of them. He was incredible, and he gave us like 150 tackles. But then it was, he was the Peanut Tillman punch. There were so many forced fumbles, and there was INTs, and there was like defensive touchdowns, and he was amazing. And then, like you say, injuries have just like he's just a shell of a man on that field now. Like I wonder if he's literally, if they're keeping him for that snap share just purely for motivational side of it, because he's like, you hear him speaking sometimes, like they do like the mic'd up segments and stuff, and he's an amazing like huddle presence guy, and he's got the nous. He just like, he can diagnose the play and everything. His body just doesn't get him there anymore. I'm
just as sad as you are about how this is kind of playing out. He was one of my favorite linebackers for a long time, and it's really disappointing to see. I'd feel, it might sound bizarre to say, but I'd feel a lot happier if he was on the injury report and there was reasons for his reduced role and his poor performances. But it's really sad to see. Who's the second linebacker that you hate for week 5?
Oh, I absolutely hate. It's the copy paste version of Cody Barton. It's Big Bob Spillane. It's generic white guy number 2. Like I'm building a cinema movie, and we can put in the credits generic white guy 1, played by Cody Barton, generic white guy 2, played by Robert Spillane. Like it's same thing, different uniform. I'm just not feeling it. It's like he's playing 100% of the snaps. This is how sort of like generically similar they are. Cody Barton's averaging 11.38 points per game across the first 4 weeks on 67 snaps a game. Robert Spillane is averaging 11.94 points per game across the first 4 weeks on 67 points per game. 67 snaps per game. Like they're just same dude, different uniform, except where Cody Barton's bad at everything except tackling, Bob's bad at tackling and is okay at everything else. Like it's just, I'm just not feeling it, man. Like you've got him at LB 15, and at least he's got a sack. So if I look at his stat line, it's one more than Cody Barton's. Cody Barton's 37 tackles, 1 fumble recovery, 2 QB hits. Bob Spillane, 33 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack, and a QB hit. So he's got 1 extra column there. And at least he can get into the backfield and provide those tackles for a loss. But I'm still like, it's just the Raiders are playing the Packers. I think Aaron Jones is just going to eat him for breakfast. And I really see this game being one where the Packers come out and try and prove their offense. Like with Watson coming back, Aaron Jones coming back, and I can easily see the Packers just with the way that the Raiders looked against who did they play last week? Was it the Chargers?
Chargers, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And I can just see, like, weirdly enough, I never thought I'd hear myself saying this sentence, but I can see myself seeing Jordan Love just put foot in ass. And it's just the Raiders are just going to get blown off the park, especially if Jimmy G's not back from concussion and they're playing Aiden O'Connell and their defense is on the field every other minute. So,
yeah, I don't agree. I'm not a huge Spillane fan. But the only thing I don't agree with is the idea. The only thing I think he's good at is run defense and tackling. Maybe less so this year than last year, but we had a larger sample size last year to look at. So I believe more in that than I do in the last 4 games. And I think against the Packers, you mentioned Aaron Jones. I think Spillane could be a big performer in that game. So for that reason, I have him ranked as my LB 15. If he can get back to performing like he did as a run defender last year. I think in every other respect, he's a pretty poor player. What I try and do is detach myself from this idea of having to rank my players.
Good players, bad players.
How good they are. Yeah. I've got dynasty ranks where I do more, something more akin to that, where, good players, especially the young guys, obviously, are ranked a lot higher than the likes of the Cody Bartons, the Robert Spillanes. But for the purposes of a weekly rank against a team that I think are going to run it a lot, him being a player who has shown some proficiency in run defense last year, I kind of like his outlook for this week.
He just needs to hope that Aaron Jones gets the ball more than A.J. Dillon, because if it's A.J. Dillon, the D-line's getting all those tackles, because A.J. Dillon just runs straight up the arse of his O-line and doesn't go anywhere else. So he's not getting a chance to make that tackle. It's just into the O-line and fall over.
Could be. So my second guy is one of the best names in football, Divine Deablo. I've got him as my LB 31. Abbey 31, one ahead of Alex Anzalone and one ahead of Alex Singleton. And I think I've been quite kind to.
It makes sense that you don't like him if you do like Spillane. It all makes sense.
So two reasons. Two reasons with Deablo. Firstly, his production's been pretty mediocre. He's got 27 tackles through 4 games, averaging just under 7. I think that is quick maths. And secondly, his snap share is diminishing, not by a lot, but enough to make me concerned that if that trend continues this week, it could drop to somewhere in that sort of low to mid 70% range, which is significant. He played almost every down through the first 2 weeks. His snap share then dropped to 84% in week 3. And last week, it was just at 71%. Spillane, we talked about him. He continues to play every down. And it's interesting to see that even Luke Masterson, who played only a handful of snaps in the first 3 weeks, not sort of 25% snap share last week. Is this a sign of things to come? Question for you, really. It's probably, in my opinion, it's too early to draw anything conclusive, but I just don't like where this is heading.
There's not a single name you've got listed ahead of him that I would take him over. And in fact, there's guys behind him that I would possibly look to move up above him. Like, you've got Henry Toro behind him. I'd probably move him up. You've David Long and Chad Muma, who we talked about before. I'd probably move them ahead of him as well. Like, it's just, it's just troubling seeing like such a drastic drop of like 25% of snaps just gone.
Yep. Yeah, I don't wholly disagree with you saying about a couple of those guys move ahead of him. As I said, like, I think I have been a bit kind to Deablo with that ranking. I always adjust them on a Thursday night. Something I should have mentioned to the audience before. I always adjust them on a Thursday and again on a Sunday to take into account, any latest injury news and such like. So yeah, he might drop even further then. I'd be keen to look out for any news, any comments from out of Raiders camp this week that might give us a clue as to what their intentions are. But I suspect we'll hear nothing, and we'll just have to wait until Sunday and see how this plays out.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk defensive lineman. Who is the first defensive lineman who you are keen on for week 5?
It is probably one of the most polarizing players at the defensive line edge position, and it's Chase Young. He missed week 1, and I went, "Are we doing it
Here
again?
we go again. Here we go again."
Yeah, 100. That was the thing, because it was like all through camp, it was like they didn't put him on pup. They didn't put him on pup. And then they came out and they're like, "Oh, he might be ready to play week 1." And then week 1 rolled around, and they're like, "Oh, he's not ready yet." And I was just like, "Here we go!" Like it's the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas meme. It's here we go again. And then week 2 rolls around, and I was like, do we have Chase Young? Is it happening? Is it happening? And we haven't had the explosion. 18.5 points in week 2, down week in week 3, and then this past week again, 15.75 points as he racked up another sack against Philly. And the grades are there. He's averaging, so across the 3 games, he's averaging 13.68 points. There's no tackle flaw. I will be honest with you right now. Like, you are hunting for sack production. It is sack or bust. Because he's averaging 3 tackles a game. He's got 2.5 sacks, 4 QB hits. He's playing 80% of the snaps, though. That is the thing that's so encouraging for me. And that's with him having a reduced snap share in his first week back in week 2, where I think he only played about 70%. Like this past week, he was up close to 90% snap share. And I'm comparing him to Montez Sweat, because you've got Chase Young at DL24 Edge 18. You've got Sweat as like a top 10 guy. Young's got 18.1% pass rush win rate. Sweat's is 11.1. My whole stick this week is I think you've got Sweat too high, and I think you've got Young too low, and I think they should be more meeting in the middle.
Okay, yeah, I take your point. I am high on Chase Young, so much so that he is also my first DL riser this week.
Yes, my man.
For all the reasons you mentioned, I'm kind of encouraged by what we've seen so far this season. One of the points I would add to one of the points you made is that he's been relatively productive despite playing against some really good left tackles. He's faced Garrett Bowles, Dion Dawkins, and Lane Johnson, and yet still managed to put up 16 pressures and 3 sacks in 3 games. And that's some pretty stiff competition right there, isn't it? Right? This week
it's Justin Fields this week.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. So, yeah, this week playing the Bears. The Bears have allowed 19 sacks, the 3rd most of any NFL team, and left tackle Larry Borum is not close to any of those 3 players I just mentioned a moment ago. In fact, he was kind of schooled by the Broncos last week. He wasn't the only culprit in allowing Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper to have big games, but he was arguably the worst offensive lineman for the Bears. So yeah, I'm fully on board with Chase Young. And just to address the point about Young and Sweat, I have more confidence in Sweat because I know who he is. I've seen what he can do. He's a guy who's on the fringe of 10 sacks every season. It's only been 3 games with Young. I'm yet to have that confidence in him that he can return to that rookie season form, or even maybe go one better than that. So if he continues to produce as he has, then yeah, that gap will definitely close. I do consider the two to be fairly similar as far as what they've done so far this year. I just have more confidence in Sweat. Who's the second defensive lineman who you like?
Yeah, the other guy I like, I've gone for the chonky boys. I've gone for the inside guys. Because I was just scrolling through your ranks, and this one just sort of slapped me in the face because I was like, it's Ed Oliver. You've got him at DT 15, D-line 53.
Yep.
Like that to me, like you do know that Ed Oliver is the DT1 so far on seasonal scoring. Like no defensive tackle has scored more points than Ed Oliver. Just throwing that out there, just casually.
I'm aware.
He's casually just averaging 16.27 points per game. 15 tackles, 6 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, 7 QB hits. I'm assuming it's because he's only playing 36 snaps a game. Like that's got to be it's got to be the Bills rotation is the reason you're like no bye. 12 pressures, 2.5 sacks, 9.2% win rate. So that's good. It's not incredible. But I'm loving the fact that he's just eating interior offensive linemen for breakfast, and he is just crushed. Like 6 tackles for a loss is monumental through 4 games. Like especially for an interior lineman. So that man is just a space eater, but he's blowing by interior linemen, and he's just eating running backs for breakfast. And Buffalo plays Jacksonville this week, and Jacksonville does like to run the ball. And Trevor Lawrence isn't incredible at evading pressure. Like he's middle of the pack. It's not like he's been sacked all the time, but it's as it stands, like for sacks, Jacksonville is averaging a sack a game versus opposing DTs. So they're giving up 1 per game. They're 30th in the league currently in sacks allowed to DTs. So if they're going to give up 1 sack to a defensive tackle, I'm thinking that sack's going to go to Ed Oliver.
So the reason I've got him here is because, like you say, his snap share isn't great. Also because the Jaguars have only given up, let me have a look. I know it's relatively low. So Lawrence has only been sacked 8 times this year in 4 games, which is
four of those have gone to the defensive tackles.
I take your point. But this comes back to, and I'll make a wider point here. When we look at players and they're performing really well, and we say, that guy is a DT12, are we remembering the other guys that we're talking about in the list above him? It's really easy to say. I'm not saying you're doing this, but it's really easy to say, yeah, that guy's a he should be a top 12 edge. And it's not until you start to do the rankings and look at some of the talent, especially at the DT position, especially in the last few years, that you start to actually second guess yourself about some of these guys and realize that, you know, he might be playing particularly well right now, but there are some superstars ahead of him on that list. I know that Oliver's an ascending player. I'm not going to fight you too hard on this one because, you know, the proof's in the pudding, right? And we've seen him play really well through 4 weeks. The first thing I look to when I try and question whether or not the sack rate is sustainable is the pressure rate. And this is partly where I've got problems with Oliver. He's produced his sacks despite only producing 12 pressures. Now, you'd be a madman to think that he would be able to sustain a 25% sack rate or finishing rate through the rest of the season. You know what I mean? And that's probably the reason why his PFF pass rush grade, along with his win rate, is so low. I just don't think it's sustainable. I would love it to be. I really liked Ed Oliver coming out. He's taken a long time to get there, but you know, we've seen people like Dexter Lawrence go from being, you know, a couple of sacks, 3, 4, 5 sacks a season to all of a sudden being one of the most impactful pass rushers at the position. And it's not a position that people can immediately be great at. It does take time. So I'm not ruling out the possibility that Ed Oliver could have taken that leap into that into the bottom half of that upper echelon of defensive tackles. I just don't think that his performances so far are going to be sustainable over a longer period, I guess is what I'm saying. So my next guy is Josh Uche. So I've gone pretty deep with this one. I've got him as my edge 39 or my DL 54 this week. That's actually one place behind Ed Oliver and one ahead of Byron Young. He's a guy that's intrigued me for a while. He's played such a relatively small role for the Pats for years, especially last year. There was only one single game where he played more than a half of the defensive snaps available, more than 50%. And yet he still finished with 56 pressures, including 12 sacks. And his 19.6% pressure rate was the best among all edge rushers in the league. I think Rashan Gary was second. But yeah, Uche was number one. On any other team, right, that kind of production would be rewarded with a larger role the next season. But this is the Pats. So despite having Matthew Judon, Dietrich Wise, and Uche, they went out and drafted us another second-round rookie in Keon White. So again, Uche has been playing a small role this year, but he's continued to make the most of his opportunity, producing 15 pressures and 2 sacks despite rushing the passer only 64 times. Now, the big news, of course, is that, and the reason he's entering my rankings for the first time this year is that Matthew Judon is going to miss the next few months with a bicep injury. And that kind of has me...
I think he might be going for the season.
Oh, for the season? Sorry, I didn't see that. I haven't looked since.
I haven't seen it yet. But I was looking at reports that that they think he literally could miss the rest of the year because bad.
Wow. The last one I saw was I think it was Tom Pelissaro. He said it could be as at least 2 months. But yeah, I'll have to go back and double check that. Well, hey, that kind of works in my favor in this particular nomination, doesn't it? But yeah, that kind of has me low-key excited, sorry, Judon, about seeing Uche in a larger role. And I'm interested to see what he can do with it. Also, the Pats face the Saints this weekend, and it's a pretty good matchup for the Patriots' edge rushers. Carr's been sacked 13 times this year, 6th most in the NFL. Ryan Ramchik's a good left tackle, but he's allowed 3 sacks in the last 2 games. And on the other side, Trevor Penning, he's just really struggled. He's ranked 9th amongst all offensive tackles in pressures allowed. So yeah, let's see what Uche can do with a larger workload. What's your thoughts?
That's the only thing. Does he get the larger workload? That's literally the only thing that would stop me from sort of rubber stamping this. I don't trust Bill Belichick in any way, shape, or form when it comes to defensive rotational players. Like, do we just see more of Dietrich Wise and like do we see more of Keon White, like you mentioned, promising young rookie drafted in the 2nd round? Like, what happens with this rotation? Like, why has he decided that Josh Uche is only worth a 50% snap share? So that's the only thing that worries me is what is his scheme for him to keep this guy that's been so talented when he's been on the field? Why do you not give him more play? And if you're not giving him more play for a very specific reason, does Matt Judon being injured affect that very specific reason or not? And that's the only thing.
That's a very good point. It's a very good point. Wise was pretty productive last year. He had like 50-something pressures and 7-8 sacks. So I can understand why Uche hasn't been getting as much love as I would like him to, but I think he still deserves more than he's been getting. And as you say, it could be all three guys see an increase in snap share. I mean, White's been pretty similar to Uche through the first 4 games of the season, so that would make some sense. I just think that Uche was able to be productive in limited snap share last year. He was being able to be productive in limited snap share this year. If he sees even a 10, 15, 20% increase, again, low-key excited. This is a deep one, as I say, and that's the reason why he's ranked so low still. If I was confident he was going to be getting 70, 65, 70% of the snaps, I'd have him way higher than I do. But yeah, sure. I've got him as low as I do for the reason that you mentioned, I guess. We don't know exactly how this is going to play out.
Yeah. And that makes perfect sense. So it's not like we're sitting here arguing over Josh Uche being like aged 15.
Yeah, I mean, just at least add him, even if you're not going to start him. Add him, wait a week, see how this plays out, and then if it doesn't play out in the way that I would like it to, then obviously you've lost nothing.
Yeah, Jase Abbey. Let him know.
Tell me what an idiot I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Screenshot us your bad beats if Josh Uche loses you your week.
I like it. So with that, we're moving on to the DL fallers. So who don't you like on the defensive line this week and why?
I want to caveat this with the fact that you've just asked me who I don't like on the defensive line, and I find that offensive because I really like this player on the defensive line. It's just the difference between how you had him and Ed Oliver ranked, and the guy I'm talking about is Jeffrey Simmons. And I'm not going to argue Simmons' production. I'm not going to argue Simmons' pedigree. You can't make me because he's incredible. He is just a man mountain that destroys interior offensive lines. But I literally just made that point, but so does Ed Oliver. And it's just previous production across the season so far. Obviously we've got a bigger sample size of Jeffrey Simmons doing it for longer, but it's more. My whole point is more. I feel like there should be, again, like I said with Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Even though these two are on different teams, I feel like there should be a closer gap between Ed Oliver and Jeffrey Simmons. So I'm just a little bit lower on Simmons for this week in his matchup where they are playing. I was literally just looking at it as well.
Colts.
They are playing the Colts, and I feel like the Colts' weakness is on the outside. It's not on the inside. And that's why I am a little bit lower on Simmons. But the fact that you said I don't like him, I take offense with that because I love Jeffrey Simmons. The guy is a monster.
He is. And we again, going back to an earlier point, and it's one of the biggest questions I have for myself each week with these rankings is how reactive to be to what I've seen in recent weeks versus what I know a player is capable of over a larger sample size. And there's always a balance between the two that can be a challenge to try and reach. So with Simmons, we know he's a monster. He's been doing it for years. He's that rare DT who will be knocking on the door or exceeding 10 sacks each year. And if you're the kind of person that invests heavily in the PFF pass rush grades, you'll see that this year his pass rush grade is better than it's ever been before. I think he can have an impact against the Colts, and I will not stand for your slander at all.
How dare you? Don't you put those words in my mouth. Don't you dare.
just wait till Josh hears you as well, and I know he's the biggest Simmons fan.
I'm not. No, because we can go back to the pre-show we did for the after show, and I'm pretty sure I sat there salivating at the mouth as Jake waxed poetically about big Jason.
Well, look, let's say this: if Ed Oliver records more sacks than Jeffrey Simmons this year, we've got to come up with.
I thought we were doing it this week. I thought this is a weekly ranking show. I thought we might have a head-to-head discussion. Big Ed versus Jason.
I'm happy to take that bet. We've got to decide on what one gives the other, but I'm happy to take that one.
But I'm sure I can find if I lose, I'm sure I can find something on Amazon to send to you. You know, same country, same next day shipping. We can get this sorted.
Likewise, definitely. Maybe an NFL cap or something. We may be able to figure something more interesting, but
we'll figure. Yeah, there's definitely something that we can come up with, and you can let everybody know what I shipped you on next week's show, and just be like, I got this.
I have never pulled more for Jeffrey Simmons than I will do this week. Right, so my first guy is Byron Young. So this might seem a bit of an odd one. I've got him as my edge 40, DL 55, one behind Uche and one ahead of Jermaine Johnson. He's had a fast start to his career and to the year with 3 sacks in his first 3 games. Kudos to him. He's played a much larger role than we'd expect, or at least that I expected. His snap share for an edge rusher is ridiculously high. It's like in the 90s in each of the last 3 or 4 games, and that's kind of like what Max Crosby-esque, isn't it? But I hate it. I hate Young's matchup this weekend. That's what it comes down to. He spends time on both the left and the right edge, so he's going up against Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. I don't like it at all. They're going to make life really difficult for him. I also think the game script won't work in his favor unless the Rams can cause an upset. They'll be playing from behind, and if the Eagles do get ahead and turn to the ground game, that will limit Young's pass rush opportunities.
If I've got Josh chasing after me for my Jeffrey Simmons takes, you've got Bob coming after you for the slander on his Rams. Like he's not going to stand for it whatsoever.
He's got a long way to come. I'm a long way away.
yeah. Saying it's going to be he'll chase you on his mower, like Bob on his mower, running you down. Saying it's going to be an unfavorable an unfavorable game script there for the Rams. Like they're proving everybody wrong. I thought they were going to be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes, and they said, why do we need Caleb Williams when we have Puka Nacua? So you can do that. I kind of feel like Byron Young is every Rams edge rusher ever that is benefiting from Aaron Donald just like commanding double and triple teams and beating double and triple teams over and over and over again. And it's meant that he can sort of go one-on-one with whoever's on the outside. And like you said, now he gets to go one-on-one with 6'8" Jordan Mailata or Lane Johnson. So it's not going to be as fruitful for him. So, like, shout out to The Athletic. Like, I love all of their stuff. And Jordan Rodriguez, who covers the Rams, she was on Byron Young right from the start. She said, like, this is going to be the guy. Like, he's going to be sort of the guy that fills the Leonard Floyd hole. But the thing that Leonard Floyd did really well was finish up what Aaron Donald started. And I don't think that Young is at the same level as what Leonard Floyd was at. And I just think that he's going to struggle this week. Let me, again, caveat, this week. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him, but he's got an uphill battle against the 2 tackles who went to the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah. Look, and that's what it's all about. I think he'll finish way above edge. I've got him ranked edge 40. He'll finish way above the rankings than edge 40 in the seasonal finishes. It's just about the matchup.
Yeah, it's just about the matchup. And I don't even know if the Eagles are going to have to pass that much because they've been doing reduced passing as it is. Like last 2 weeks, Hurts has had to throw a little bit more. He threw 37, especially because the Washington game, went to overtime. So he threw 37 times last week, 37 times the week before, but in their win against Minnesota, he threw 23 times. Like, if they get out in front, like you think they could do against the Rams, he's not going to need to drop back, and it's going to be DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell until the cows come home, and then it's just what are you hoping for? Like a couple of tackles for a loss to boost his production? Like, yeah, it is what it is, unfortunately.
Let's go on to player 2, who I'm not going to say hate. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Who are you not keen on for this week? Second player.
I'm coming back to London Town, baby. I'm coming back to London Town. It's the Bills Jags. It's Josh Allen. Like, the dude's got 6 sacks in 4 games. But he's Katy Perry. He's hot and he's cold. Like, and for this one, it's not going to be a yes, it's a no. And I don't know any more lyrics to that song, so I can't keep going with it. But no, it's my issue is that he's so streaky at the moment. And like I said before about when someone comes out and has this amazing production in the first 4 weeks of the season, what are we supposed to do? Like, do we extrapolate that 6 sacks out for the next 17 game sample size? Are we giving Josh Allen 24 sacks on the season? Like, are we expecting this pace to continue? No, I'm not. Especially not against the Buffalo Bills. Like, it's the 2 guys that he's beat up on, right? Is he had an amazing game against Indy. That's Anthony Richardson's first game as a professional. Week 1, Anthony Richardson's first game as a professional. Then he went quiet against Houston. Did absolutely nothing. Went quiet against KC first. Then he went quiet against Houston. And then he lit up the score sheet again against Desmond Ridder and the Falcons' absolute quagmire of an offensive line. Like, I think with Josh Allen, you can kind of look at his schedule and predict when he's going to go boom. Like, he's got we love to talk about the contract year narrative. Like, he's out there hunting for that contract. But there's going to be certain games where him as a player, I just don't think are going to be games where he's able to do it. And I don't see this game against Buffalo and his nemesis. One thing I want to mention, right? Last time these 2 dudes played, Josh Allen and Josh Allen, 2021. So that's the thing. We've got the battle for the name, like name supremacy. Defensive Josh Allen put foot in ass, like, of offensive Josh Allen. He went ballistic last time these 2 went head to head. But again, that was 2021, and I think the Buffalo Bills have improved their offensive line since then. Josh Allen is a little bit wiser. You know, he's his 5th year in the league now. I just don't see this as the week that we get another multiple sack game from Josh, and you have him as your edge number 9 as a top 10 guy, and I do not think he finishes as top 10 in the scoring this time round.
Yeah, maybe not. Dion Dawkins is a capable left tackle. But yeah, Josh Allen, I do agree that he's streaky. But this season, in the 4 games, he's been streaky. In the past, we've seen him produce over, again, I know I'm repeating points here, but across different players, but he's over a larger sample size. He is a plus player. I like him as an edge rusher. He's a guy that continues to seemingly get better each year. I don't see a lot to dislike about Allen, other than maybe Dion Dawkins at the left tackle spot. The only point I would make is that if you look down the list of DL ranks, the double-digit sack guys, the guys who have been doing it for years, they are on the backside of their career, and at some point they're going to tail off, and new blood has to kind of come through to replace them. I think Josh Allen is one of those guys that has the ability to do that. So let's wait and see. Yeah, a difference of opinion there, but hey, difference of opinion is good. It's good to get different perspectives on this, especially for our audience. So
you're not going to find an echo chamber here at the IDP after show.
So my second guy, this one will probably raise some eyebrows as well because of how he started this year. But I've gone with Danielle Hunter. He's my edge 11, DL 16, one behind Jevon Hargrave, and one ahead of George Karlaftis. Like I say, it's bold. He's a hell of a player. I'm a big fan. He started the year really well. 5 sacks, 18 tackles, and a forced fumble through 4 games. It's only because he's so good and in such good form that he remains so high in my rankings. But his matchup is horrible, and not in the traditional sense. The Chiefs' offensive tackles are nothing special. They're nothing to write home about at all. Donovan Smith appears to have dropped off a little bit, and Juwan Taylor has played poorly in the last few weeks.
He just gets flagged on every play.
Yeah, but as we mentioned on the show last week, Patrick Mahomes is just a master at evading would-be sacks. He's like Houdini. He's been sacked only twice this year on 162 dropbacks, despite playing against the likes of Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Allen, and Quincy Williams. It just doesn't add up to a big game for Hunter. Now, I will caveat this by saying, with that said, he's not the kind of guy who you can drop outside of the shallowest of leagues. So do with this what you will. But yeah, not a big fan of his matchup. So let's talk about some DBs. Which DB do you like in week 5?
I'm playing by NBA Jam rules this time, my man. And I'm staying in the flames with Dax Hill. So Dax has been the number 2 overall DB to this point so far. And I still think he's going to continue to put up great numbers. Now, I know that I'm kind of talking out both sides of my mouth right now, because for half the podcast, I've been sitting here saying, well, something's got to give, it's going to, you can't do this. It's not going to extrapolate across an entire season, and regression's going to set in. But I just think at the moment where I look at the ranking that you've got of him there at DB 15 against the Cardinals, who, don't get me wrong, they are out-kicking their coverage with the way that they've been playing, with Josh Dobbs coming in like a week before the season started and getting them out of the tanking basement, and they've been feisty in their game so far. But I still think there's going to be plenty of opportunities to be had, because Hill is flying around the field. Like, Nick Scott's good, but he's not an exceptional talent of a player. He's just a good body to have at the back end. He's a reliable guy. Jordan Battle is a rookie. He's playing in limited snaps. They're using him in 3 safety looks, but he's predominantly playing in a deep role. Dax Hill was a first-round draft pick. Like, when they took him, they took him expecting him to be a playmaker, to inherit this role after, like, with the Jesse Bates and Von Bell leaving. Like, he was their contingency plan. They were like, we're going to take you and we're going to let these guys walk out the door. He's got nearly 35 tackles across the 4 games. He's in the backfield. He's got 4 tackles for a loss. He's got 2 picks. He's got sacks so far. He's got passes defended. He's doing everything we want from him. He's all over the field. And I just think that to have him outside the top 12, the only thing is, like, ranking DBs, I can imagine, is kind of like just throwing mud at a wall. Like, there's no real sort of rhyme or reason to have DBs. Like, I know Tom K talks about it with seasonal rankings of DBs, that the safety position is the most fluid position year over year over year. The guys that we think are great can just be gone, just like that. But I just don't think this is the week that it happens for Dax Hill.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a big fan. He's risen in my rankings, meteorically. No player, I don't think, at the safety position has risen as much as Dax Hill. So it's not a question of me not liking him. It's just that, well, I disagree with the Arizona Cardinals being a good matchup for him. I don't think Dobbs has thrown a single interception this season, and obviously a lot of Dax Hill's points have come from those 2 interceptions, or they certainly helped massively anyway. So, like you said, it's not going to continue. He's not going to end the season with 9 interceptions. That's really, really optimistic at best. So yeah, I think against a quarterback that has been really careful with the ball, maybe too conservative with the ball, is not a good matchup for Hill.
I can feel you. I feel that.
My first guy is Rudy Ford. He's my DB and my safety 23, one behind Jordan Fuller and one ahead of Kareem Jackson. He's like Dax. Rudy Ford's been on on a tear. In the last 3 games, he's got 23 solo tackles, 2 pass breakups, and of course an interception, which I think was last week against Stafford. So it's been great to see him hold down that role and be so productive after earning more playing time towards the end of last season. He's also got a nice matchup this weekend. Last I checked, Jimmy G remains in the concussion protocol, but he seems likely to play considering he practiced in at least a limited basis Thursday and Saturday of last week. And, Jimmy G's thrown 6 interceptions this year, tying Daniel Jones for the most in that category. Some have questioned whether Jimmy G will regain his role when he's healthy, but obviously Josh McDaniels shut that talk down, telling reporters that he will remain the starter. But even if he misses the game, you've got Aiden O'Connell stepping in for him to get another start. O'Connell, he played really well towards the end of the game with the Chargers, but he otherwise struggled. I think there's a lot to like about Ford's chances of having another good week, whoever the Raiders have at QB this week. I like his matchup. I like his form. I like him as a player.
The thing is, I can't disagree, because I said it earlier on that I think Jordan Love goes out and puts foot in ass when it comes to the Raiders versus the Packers, and I think that the Raiders are going to be playing from behind and they're going to be throwing a lot. And it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Aiden O'Connell, whether it's Jimmy G, they're going to be tossing that ball downfield, and neither one of them is massively pinpoint precise. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for him to at least grab a pick, or if not, be making tackles downfield, be looking to pass breakups, things like that. Like it's the opportunities for him to make plays are going to be there. So I can't fault. If anything, I maybe think that, the ranking you've got from there at 23, it might be a little bit too low. Like but at the same time, I wouldn't dream of trying to sit in your seat and do these rankings after it gets to like number 5. I'm like, no, man, I'm out. Like everybody's a safety too. Like, and so, you're a braver man than me taking on this every single week. And, I can't disagree with you on Rudy Ford.
Who is the second DB that you like for week 5?
The second man that I like for week 5 is he's a bit of an IDP show favorite. It's Kyle Duggar from the New England Patriots, and it's coming down to opportunity again. Like, he has played 100% of their snaps through the first 4 weeks. He's pretty much the only consistent fixture of that entire defense. Christian Gonzalez, I think I saw today, is going on IR. They just traded for JC Jackson, which you must be ecstatic about getting him off that roster. Like,
I am over the moon.
Like,
like I said to my friend, watch him go back to the Patriots and be the same player he was before he came here.
Yeah. It's lock it in. Like, if we can't get underdog where we are, but we've got our own betting systems that we can jump on, and every week for the next 6 weeks, just smash the over 0.5 interceptions for JC Jackson. But it's the injuries and the depletion that's come from this defense, and also the matchup. Like, the New Orleans Saints have proven that they can put up points in bunches. I don't know if it's going to be as dominant as what we saw last week, because the Saints have a great defense, but they were exposed a little bit versus Tampa Bay. So it's not going to be the same level as what Dallas just did to New England, where next thing you know, the Patriots were down by like 25, and Mac Jones was just turning into Humpty Dumpty falling off the wall in front of our eyes, and Bailey Zappi ended up taking the field. But the Saints have a really good defense. They can put the Patriots in a hole, and they can look to dominate time of possession. And just like Alvin Kamara came out after the Buccaneers game and was like, it's been 2 years since I've been utilized properly. Like, what is going on? So it could end up being like a squeaky wheel gets the grease game for Kamara, and they just decide to run it down the Patriots' throat. Duggar lives in the box. Like, that's what we've seen in both Evan and Jake's show, and in the main show. They've been talking about his sweet spots percentage. Like, he is living in the box. 12 solos this past week because he was just living in the box while Dallas decided to run the ball down the throat. So if Duggar's going to get another close to double-digit solos, like, Sign me up. Like, I don't need splash plays. Give me 10 tackles, 10 solo tackles. That's close to 20 points a game. Like,
yeah, you make good points. I like Duggo. I've got him just outside that sort of safety 1 range. He's my DB 13. So my second guy that I really like is, and this is a continuation of what we've seen all year, really, is Jevon Holland. He's my DB and my safety 4, 1 behind Jesse Bates and 1 ahead of Jalen Petre. I talked about Holland on the show a few weeks ago, but obviously that doesn't preclude me from mentioning him again, because I'm just a big fan of what we've been seeing. His role under Fangio involves him playing much closer to the line of scrimmage than he did in the past. And the results have been excellent in most scoring formats. And I'll come back to that one in a second. So far this year, he's got 38 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 pass breakups. Yes, last week against the Bills was his least productive game of the season, but he still finished with 7 tackles and could have had more if he didn't miss 2 attempts. And I'm willing to let that go for a player who doesn't typically miss a lot of tackles. He's got a great matchup this weekend against the Giants. That Giants O-line has really struggled with or without Andrew Thomas. And the end result is that Daniel Jones has been under pressure constantly, leading him to throw 6 interceptions, tying Jimmy G for the most among all QBs. It's pretty optimistic to expect Holland to come up with an interception. It's a nightmare trying to predict any DB to record an interception. It's almost impossible. But the chances do increase in a game like this. And at the least, his sort of newfound tackling efficiency does offer a pretty solid weekly floor. I said I'd come back to the point about him playing close to the line of scrimmage, and I did wonder aloud a couple of weeks back about whether that might impact the big plays that he made pretty common in the previous seasons. And it is a shame to see that sort of playing out, albeit over a limited sort of sample size so far, but he hasn't really had the big plays in coverage. But I'm happy to sacrifice that in most of the scoring formats I play in to get a guy that is a pretty reliable source of tackles.
So the only thing that I would bring up is Brandon Jones. Brandon Jones is back. Last week against Buffalo, Brandon Jones played 100% of the snaps.
Yeah.
Last season, before Jones's ACL, Jones was the box safety, Holland was the deep guy, and that's why they had the utilization that they had. I haven't had a look this season at the utilization for week 4 between Brandon Jones and Jevon Holland to see what the split is. But he's more suited to that box role in terms of body type, at least. Like if we talk about stereotypical box bangers, Jones is a more stereotypical box banger than Holland is. So maybe it means that they start splitting the usage. Maybe Holland stays down there because he's shown so effective. But Jones is back now as that other safety to be paired beside Holland. So that's the only thing that maybe would stop me from saying, yeah, he's a top 5 guy now, to maybe him being still around the top 10.
The Brandon Jones point, I'm less concerned about that. I think he only played because Deshaun Elliott wasn't playing. And even though Brandon Jones was playing, Holland spent as many snaps in the box as he did as a deep safety. So I'm not concerned about
I did forget that Jones had essentially lost his role to Elliott.
He was healthy, wasn't he? I think in the first couple of weeks, Jones, and just wasn't.
He was playing special teams. He was playing like 60% of special teams in the first couple of weeks.
Fangio just doesn't play that kind of scheme either. I'm looking forward to Holland continuing in the role that he's been playing in so far. I certainly hope that's the case. Anyway, I haven't seen anything to suggest that that's not going to be the case yet. But
no, it's
got to stay open minded.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's move on to our fallers. Who do you not like at the DB position for week 5?
Richie Grant. It's just a case of predominantly basing it on your rankings. You've got both Atlanta guys in your top 6. And Grant's been underwhelming this season so far. he had his best game. He had his best game of the season so far last week, and he scored 14.5 points, and that was solo, and that was based off of solo tackles. He had 9 solos, and I wonder if that is partly because old Aquaman Nate Landman struggled in his first NFL game, and because that tackle volume wasn't there when it was Mr. 10.0 RAS score Troy Anderson flying around the field. So I'm just wondering if old Archipelago Nate Landman is taking a bit of time to adjust to the NFL game, and it gave more opportunities for Richie Grant. It's just he's not making any big plays. He's got one, like, in terms of impact plays. So if we call an impact play like an interception, a sack, a forced fumble recovery, rah. He's got 1 pass defended on the season. That is it. The rest of his numbers assists and solos, and apart from last week against Jacksonville, he just hasn't really been impressive on that part either. So I like the matchup that they have. I can see a lot coming from it with a Houston matchup, because they love to go over the middle and they love to go down the sidelines with Nico Collins and Tank Dell, and I can see there being a lot available, but I just think Jesse Bates is the better player, and he's going to just hungry hippos all the production.
Yeah, Jesse Bates is the better player. I look at Grant's performance so far this season a little differently to you. Clearly, I've got him ranked in my as a DB1 this week. I see a guy
6.
Yeah. So last season he had 122 tackles, and his role has not really changed this season. Granted, some of the players around him changed, and that can affect sort of tackle efficiency and tackle volume, but there's more consistency there in terms of the fact that he's playing for the same team. So some of the guys around him are fairly similar. His role, as I say, hasn't really changed, and I believe that he will come back to being a high tackle producer sooner rather than later, and we saw that play out last week. I think there is a place for guys that don't just record big plays. If you want that big play guy, Jesse Bates is your man. But like I said before, I like to pair guys who have a solid weekly floor alongside, sometimes in the same fantasy team, those guys who produce huge plays as well. And if Grant can get anywhere close to having 122 tackles again this season, and it looks like it might be a struggle based on how he played through 2 of the first 3 games, then yeah, I'm all for it. My rankings are never going to be a carbon copy of the top 12 players in scoring through 4 weeks. I like to look back, a larger sample size. So I completely get that. And other people will probably be asking the same thing. Why is the DT1 in IDP scoring not the DT1 in my rankings? It's simply because I don't think he's the DT1. I don't think he's even the DT5, and I don't think he's going to be the DT1 this week. That's a gamble I take. I certainly don't think he's going to be the DT1 over the course of the season. So that's a gamble I take, and maybe I'll get proven wrong, but I firmly believe in trusting what we've seen over a season more so than I do over the last 4 games. Recency bias is a killer. And it is, the recent games are the most important, but 4 games aren't more important than 18, 19, or in some cases, a whole career. So that's where my head is.
I can't believe you. We're out here talking DBs and Ed Oliver's catching strays. Like, how dare you? How dare you? This bet is it's on. It is on like Donkey Kong. Very quickly, what if I told you Jesse Bates had more tackles on the season than Richie Grant did so far?
So far this season?
Yep, so far this season. Bates has not just been a big play guy. He's also been getting the tackle.
And I've got Jesse Bates ranked ahead of Richie Grant for these reasons. He's amazing. My second guy is Donovan Wilson. And he's unranked. He was ranked last week. I forget where. This one's pretty simple, really. He got injured early in training camp, and he missed weeks 1 and 2 before returning in week 3 against the Cardinals. And that kind of explains why he's been on the field for barely half of the available defensive snaps in the last 2 games. He's been, returning to full health. I'm sure as he gets healthier, we'll see him establish a bigger role once again, and it'll be interesting to see how he plays once he does. I'll be inserting him back into my rankings again in the near future. I'm sure of it. But until we see that happen, I've got to avoid starting him or even ranking him. The safety and the DB positions are just so deep that we can afford to play the waiting game and run the risk of missing a week where he plays every down again.
No, I understand that completely. And the other thing is, it's like they actually have a really talented safety room there in Dallas between Donovan Wilson, Malik Hooker, and Jaron Kearse. Like, that's three guys that sort of will spend time poaching plays and points from each other. So at this moment, I think Hooker's on the injury report. I believe I remember seeing him something about a shoulder. So there's a possibility that we could see more playtime for Wilson if Hooker misses time. But again, it's what's his fitness like? What's the trust in the coaches that the coaches have in him for him to be playing a full lot of snaps? And if you're going to be sort of rolling the dice on a guy that is not going to be playing a full allotment of snaps, you should probably be looking to do it at a guy that's got a higher ceiling than Donovan Wilson. And I mean, just for this season so far, what we've seen, like Donovan Wilson last season was amazing. I think he finished top 10. Like he finished up as a top 10 guy. Like he was blown across. Like he was all over the field. But we haven't seen it yet because the fitness hasn't been there and the opportunity hasn't been there yet. So I think this is more of a wait and see. Like if you want to maybe pick him up and try stash him, like if you can afford to stash DBs on your roster, like if you've got that luxury. But it's for me, it's definitely sort of I'll click the little like icon beside his name while he's sitting there on waivers, and I'll wait to see what each week I'll go back and go, how do you do this week, and before I decide to pull the trigger.
Yeah, and it's easier at this position than it is at some of the others, right? Rashan Gary springs to mind. He's a guy who's been playing a really small snap share as he kind of comes back to health. But
I love Rashan, and I keep playing him. He's playing 30% of the snaps, and I'm like, I'm plugging you in because you are so good. Because every time, and he was a guy I was talking about because you were higher on him, but I really didn't want to have to just concede to the fact that he's playing 30% of snaps. Like, because it's essentially like an Uno reverse card. It's like, he's so talented, 30% of snaps. Like, there's nothing else that you can do when someone goes, he is on the field 1 out of 3 pass rush plays, and you're like, yeah, yes, he is.
But it's kind of worked out in most weeks. He's that good that he's still been productive a lot of the time. If it wasn't for his low snap share, he'd be one of those guys for me that would be top 10. Without a doubt, most weeks, unless he had a really difficult matchup. So
he is cooking everybody he's coming up against. Like I mean, the Lions have like a top 6 offensive line, and is it Taylor Decker is their left tackle, I believe, for the Lions side. Yeah. And Gary was giving him fits that whole Thursday night game for every time he was on, and he was only on the field for 15, 16 snaps. But every one of those snaps, Taylor, Decker was just straight backwards, just like, just filling his pants with doo-doo because Gary was giving him fits.
Yeah, can't wait for him to get back to full health and start playing a lot of snaps again.
We were robbed of a fully fledged breakout last season because of that ACL injury. Like he was, I'm sure we would have seen 12 to 15 sacks and just let's go, Rashan.
Agree. Okay, so we've ended on Rashan Gary rather than Donovan Wilson, which is a more exciting way to end this, I think. So with that's a wrap, Aron. Again, thanks a bunch for joining me tonight. It's been great having you on. I know you've been driving all over the country today, so I really appreciate you taking the time out to share your insight with our audience. So subscribers of the IDP show will already be familiar with you and your content. But for anyone who isn't, please share where they can find you and your work.
So my work is literally one article that I've written, and it can be found at idpshow.com, and it was just based around Will Anderson about how he's going to be amazing. I do more work behind the scenes more than anything. I do the doc prep for the main guys for the main show, and I also help the lovely Dr. Leesus with his injury report. So you can catch the Banged Up podcast there in the after show feed on Spotify. Apart from that, you can find me on Twitter at IDP Oz, but I don't really tweet a lot of things. I'm more of like a lurker in the Twitter space. Occasionally, I'll have a rant at someone who tries to tell me that Keyshawn Nixon shouldn't be running kicks out of an end zone. I need those kick return yards. Play in leagues with kick return yards. But I'm just really happy that you were able to write such an eloquently worded letter to Josh for him to let me off the chain and actually get on a camera and do something. So he was moved by your written request and let the cage barrier down. So I'm free.
Oh, it's been a pleasure having you on. And by the way, you sold yourself really poorly there. That's like the worst sales job I've ever. This is why I'm a technical engineer. I got kicked out of sales because the customers kept hanging up from me, and I was like, right, so I've just purchased. And I can't call them. So no, you deserve way more credit than you've just given yourself. If anyone wants to follow me and tell me how stupid all of my takes and my rankings are, I'm on X at Jase Abbey, and the full rankings we spoke about in this show are available to subscribers on the IDP show site at theidpshow.com, oddly enough. Thanks to anyone and everyone who has tuned in to the show. We couldn't do this without you. The feedback about the show has been both humbling, mind-blowing, and probably misplaced. I'll be back again. I'll be back again next week to talk about my week 6 rankings. In the meantime, good luck with your fantasy matchups this weekend. Cheerio.
This was the IDP After Show.